Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augment Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 89 of the show, which still surprised. I've been doing this for 89 episodes, but we still keep pushing. But overall, we're going to do a little bit of house cleaning before today's episode because today's episode is more of a discussion. And I use that word specifically because that's really what today's episode is. It's a discussion because I cannot give a review about this object because, well, I don't have it. So this is more of a discussion and let you guys, let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why do you feel the way that you do? But as we mentioned, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping today. So obviously in terms of the show, again, thank you guys so much for your constant support. You guys seem to really like the AirPods and AirPods Pro project that I did. So thank you guys for enjoying that. It really means a lot to me. Obviously we're still growing, which is always a plus. Obviously the Patreon page, kind of wish it grew a little bit more, but hey, it's just normal. Like I said, it's optional. You guys can choose if you want to or not. Great if you did, great if you didn't. Doesn't change a thing. And, it's just a nice thing. But overall, I'm also saying this now because I'm also working on some special perks for Patreon backers. So like some little special things for them. Obviously, besides like getting early access to the episodes, but also giving them like special perks and, special things, like access to special types of things. So we're working on that right now to see what we can do and, go from there. Aside from that, in terms of how I'm doing great, by the way. Everything's been going good on my end, really excited on how well I did on my circuits test. We just found out today that, I got an 85, which I know you guys are thinking like 85, like you got an 85. Like, why are you celebrating? Long story short is that in that circuits class, our 3 big exams are worth 30% of our grade. So each one of them basically all 3 exams make up 90%. So getting an 85 on the first test makes me really happy because that sets me up in a good position to, score at least an 80 or higher on the next coming test to make sure that I can get a good grade in the class. So, keep me in your thoughts and prayers about that because it's really stressful. Trust me, it is. Like that test, burnt me out. It makes you think a lot. It makes you think very critically, and you have to analyze every single detail of that circuit to make sure you get the right answer. So it's very, very time intensive, very thought provoking, but I definitely did well, and I'm happy that my hard work paid off, and just seeing how it goes with the next test. And aside from that, I think besides like other personal stuff, like I'm doing great. I'm doing great emotionally, mentally, I'm doing great. And I'm just enjoying the ride with you guys because obviously, as we've established after CES and after the Samsung Impact event, yes, there's a lot of tech news going into the summer of this year, really, because, well, a lot of stuff's been happening and it's hard for me to keep up with everything. But that's why we're talking about today's topic because I've asked this topic twice on the Instagram page to see what you guys want me to talk about. And this topic is, as I mentioned, is more of a discussion because of what we're talking about. So we're talking about the S20 Ultra. I'm not going to call this thing the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra because that is a mouthful. But this phone is, in my opinion, a very special case. It is not like any other smartphone that is currently on the market. And I know a lot of people share this opinion, but for differing reasons. And I view this phone as an anomaly because it's weird. Because the reason I say the S20 Ultra is a anomaly, in my opinion, is because there is no direct comparison for it. Now, let me explain. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, you can compare this with the iPhone 11 Pro Max or Pixel 4 XL. And the reality is you can't compare these things. Mainly because of what these things are supposed to do. Even though, yes, I understand the iPhone 11 Pro Max is a very expensive phone. The S20 Ultra is a very expensive phone. It starts at $13.99 US dollars. Like, that's a lot of money to start at $1,400. And it's weird because a lot of people consider this phone as a phone with no compromises. What do they mean by that? When they say that this phone has no compromises, when you think of top of the line specs, this is the phone you think of because this thing is insane. We're talking about 5G capabilities, Snapdragon 865, up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, 5,000 milliamp hour battery, up to 1.5 terabytes of storage, and then we're talking about like the 6.9 inch display that, it's 120 hertz at 1080p. Then you got like the 8K camera capabilities that's able to record video at 8K and play that video at 8K. And, you have the 100 times zoom camera, which obviously we're going to talk about that because, you'll understand why. And it's just a phone that's viewed as no compromises. Now, granted, they did something really useful, which I thought this isn't just for the S20 Ultra, this is really for the whole S20 line. That they actually made the curved display less curved. So it actually isn't as much of a waterfall as it normally is, which I really love that because that actually makes screen protectors much, much more viable. Because I've shared this opinion. I think curved displays on smartphones are stupid. It does not immerse you into the experience. It just makes things much worse because of light reflection. It's just really, really, really annoying. And it's just not fun. And it also makes your phone more likely to break if you drop it. So, just gives you more things to break. But aside from that, I consider this phone an anomaly because there's nothing that really compares to it. Even though, yes, I know a lot of people say, well, what if you take an iPhone 11 Pro Max? You can't compare them. I get it in terms of power. Yeah, you could. But in terms of capabilities and what the phone is supposed to do, the Ultra is not meant for the average consumer. This is not meant for just everyday people just to take this out into the street and just use as your typical smartphone. This is a behemoth of a phone. This thing is massive. A lot of people have stated this before. This phone is incredibly massive. And it's also very bulky too. Well, they had to make it bulky because, you have a lot of specs and it needs a big battery, which I'm perfectly fine with that. But the reason I think it's an anomaly is because of what the phone is able to do and what it represents. Because in my mind, and this is why I said this episode is also a discussion, for you guys to let me know what you guys think. This phone, in my opinion, almost seemingly kills off the Note, which makes me question if we're really going to get a Note this year. Let me explain. This phone, in terms of just raw power and size, is basically a Note. If you, without the S Pen, obviously, because, it doesn't have the S Pen. But in terms of raw power, camera capabilities, this thing is a Note. This thing is, by definition, a Note. And it's crazy to think about that Samsung is going to make something more powerful than the Ultra this year, which is debatable because many people don't really know if there is going to be a Note this year because of the Ultra. Because Samsung's even stated, look, this might not be every year. I personally hope they don't make an Ultra every year. I think that'd be a bad idea. I think it should be every other year, maybe every 2 years. It would make sense to do a new Ultra. But it's weird to think about it because this phone just does so much. Now, granted, there are some compromises that some people have pointed out, in terms of not having headphone jack. Yes, that does suck. It still does suck. And then, some nitpicky things some people have said, not being able to do 1440p at 120 hertz. Yes, that also sucks. But I think it's also because of the battery degradation. I think it makes more logical sense to take care of your battery more. And I think it's not a bad thing for Samsung to not allow you to use the 120 hertz at a higher display. So, you can only use it at full HD instead of, QHD plus. And it just makes sense because battery health is a very important thing, especially because this phone has a massive battery. And obviously at that, higher screen resolution and that high refresh rate, yeah, that phone's battery is going to die pretty quickly. And it's also going to strain the battery incredibly. Like, I don't know if any of you guys know how physics work, or chemistry, or really circuits in general. Yes, electronics generate heat, and a lot of it. If any of you have put together a computer and you see the temperature is like 60 something degrees Celsius, that's not 60 degrees Fahrenheit, chief. Like, go look at the conversion and you'll see the electronics get really hot. They generate a lot of heat. And obviously in terms of battery health, yes, that can degrade the battery. And some people don't seem to realize this. Like, yeah, it makes sense for them to limit the 120 hertz to 1080p because they don't want you to kill this phone's battery incredibly quickly. Because, hey, they want you to enjoy the phone, not constantly have to be on a charger. But aside from that, this phone has everything you want. It has everything you could possibly imagine on a phone. And now, granted, a lot of people are still not going to like this phone. It's just fact. Like, there's some people that just don't like Samsung phones. They don't like the software experience. And a lot of people are still hesitant because even some diehard Apple fans, you know, like that some people have talked about. I know Drew from Taylor Swift Tech has shared his opinion. He's actually happy that Samsung made this phone because, yeah, this phone is considered no compromise. Like, they didn't hold back. They dumped everything into this phone. It's insane. But there are some drawbacks still. Like, obviously, yes, Samsung still doesn't have the best track record with software updates. Like, at best, you get 2 years worth of software updates. How many actual Android updates you get in that? You know, up to see how many you get. But for me, the S20 Ultra is an anomaly because it doesn't make sense so much. Like, it's hard for my brain to wrap around that this phone was made. And yeah, granted, there's a reason why they can charge as much as they want because there's nothing like it. There's no phone that's even close to this thing. Nothing. And because it's just raw power. Like, this is absurd on how much power they put in this thing. The 865 is a great chipset based on what we've seen and, you know, benchmarking, which obviously, like I said, Geekbench is not the most accurate way to measure a chip's performance, but, you know, in terms of numbers, yes, it performs very well. The fact that it has 16 gigabytes of RAM, the fact that it could have basically a terabyte and a half of storage. Like, it has half a terabyte built in if you buy the max version. Maxed out storage option at 512, and then you can still put a terabyte SD card in there. Like, it's insane, you know, that they really made this phone. And I applaud Samsung for doing this. I think this was a smart idea. I think this definitely is how you make an impact on the market. Because, yes, I've already stated this multiple times. Compromise is needed rather than innovation. Like, even John Prosser said the same thing. The market does not need innovation. It needs compromising, which compromising means giving the average consumer the phone that they're actually going to use, not going overboard and giving them what they could use or what they want to, you know, like, give them something what they're actually going to use and at an affordable price. Granted, Samsung realized they can't really compete in this space with their I'd say their flagship line because it just doesn't work that way. Think about it. The S10e, it didn't sell as well as they expected it to. It didn't. Like, the S10 and the S10 Plus still sold better than the S10e. Obviously, yes, the S10 line is still available now, which obviously the fact that the S10e is now available for like $550, I think, or somewhere probably even less than that, really, depending on where you find it from. It's a good bargain for a phone because I think it was really smart that Samsung decided to do this because, like I said, the Ultra cannot be compared to anything. There is nothing that can generally be compared to the Ultra. There isn't. But the S20 and the S20 Plus, yes, you can, because now you're debating between last year's, because Samsung decided to keep last year's phones available and obviously reduce the pricing like what Apple did. And the fact that you can get an S10 Plus for about like $850, somewhere in that range, or maybe even less than that, is crazy. And because it's still a great phone. The S10 Plus is a very popular phone. It has a big battery, 4,000 milliamps. It has a big screen. Still has great cameras. You know, obviously software, you know, Samsung, debatable. It has great power under the hood. It also has a headphone jack. So, you know, if you like your headphone jack, you can keep your headphone jack on that because it's the last Samsung phone that had it. But it's crazy to think about it, guys. Like, I'm being honest with y'all. That Samsung realizes that most of their profit are made in the high end. And yes, that's why these phones are very expensive. Like, the S20 starts at $1,000. The S20 Plus starts at $1,199, and then the Ultra starts at $1,399. This is mainly because of the whole 5G modems, and also at the same fact that they packed in so many specs, because, you know, all of them have over 4,000 milliamp hour batteries. Like, it's just insane, to be honest. Like, and I personally applaud Samsung for this. I think this was like a smart idea to alienate themselves from the market, because the Ultra is an anomaly. It doesn't make sense. Like, you can't realistically judge this phone the same way that you judge every other phone. Like, you can't just do a comparison from this to this, because it won't make sense. It's not meant to compete. Like, granted, I think as we get near the end of the year, or I'd say realistically later on in the year, yes, we will start to see some competition. We will start to see phones that are specifically designed to trade blows with the Ultra. We will. Like, I know Apple is definitely going to make something similar to the Ultra, and, you know, in form of Apple or iOS, in the form, like, in their own unique way. Obviously, yes, we have the LG V60 coming later in the year, which a lot of people, you know, if you like LG phones, you're very excited for the V60 because it looks very promising based on some of the changes they're making. You know, obviously you have the Sony Xperia Mark II. You have, I don't even know what else. Like, granted, yes, there's still some budget options coming that a lot of people are excited for. Obviously, OnePlus is going to be showing off the OnePlus 8, you know, and then the 8 Pro and, you know, the 8 Pro Lite. And I'm overall excited to see how this all plays out, you know, because talking about the S20 Ultra, let's talk about the camera system. So the fact that they talk about the 100x zoom, yes, it's semi-accurate. Like, yes, it can do, it's mainly a 10x zoom sensor, but because of digital stabilization, you just multiply it by 10. So, you know, 10 times 10 is 100. So in terms of digital quality, yes, it can do 100x zoom. It does not look good. It looks abysmal. It looks terrible. Like, it's just weird. I don't know why you would ever want to use that, but it's just nice marketing that, hey, we have a 100x zoom. What can you do? But 10x zoom, that's amazing that they're able to get that perfectly right. And that's awesome. Obviously, in terms of other cameras, you know, like the 108 megapixel sensor that's able to do 8K video, because obviously to do 8K, you need a high pixel count, because 8K is very, very, very intensive, as you could probably tell, because 8K. Like, the camera quality is not in question. Like, a lot of people do like the camera quality of the S20 Ultra. Now, granted, I've seen some people talking about how, for some reason, in terms of the image quality, the S20 is actually better. The S20 and the S20 Plus actually have better image quality than the S20 Ultra. And, you know, it's weird to say that, because it's like, you'd expect the more expensive phone to have a better camera and better camera quality and better camera software. But for some reason, based on what I'm hearing, this is, like I said, these are all people's opinions. You know, I have yet to see and actually compare the photos myself. But some people are saying that the S20 Plus and the S20 have better camera quality than the S20 Ultra, which, you know, would be a little bit concerning, because yes, it's a very expensive, very, very expensive phone. We're not going to sit here and pretend like it isn't. But it's very interesting, and that's something I'm going to be looking into. But overall, when I look at the S20 Ultra, it's an anomaly. It's something that still is hard for my brain to wrap around, that Samsung was able to pull this off, and that they made this incredible powerhouse of a phone that's able to do so much and not compromise in important areas. That Samsung was like, look, you guys wanted a phone with no compromises. Here you go. We just spec this thing out. And granted, yes, this phone is definitely for those spec junkies that love so many, like, just care about the numbers of their smartphone. But it's also not best for the average consumer, because I've had multiple discussions where some people are saying, hey, does it make sense to upgrade from an S10 Plus to a S20 Ultra? My answer is, what are you using your phone for? If you're not doing anything intensive, don't even bother upgrading, because it's not worth it. Like, you're just wasting money at that point. And granted, I'm not saying I'm telling you how to use your money, but I want you to be smart about it and be logical and think about it. Because it's like, does it make sense for me to drop another $1,000 on a phone that I'm just going to do the exact same thing that I did last time with my phone? You know, do the ends justify the means? And for many people's cases, the answer is no, it doesn't. It's just, it looks cool. And yeah, I get it. That's how some people say, that's capitalism at its finest, or, materialism. But it doesn't make sense. It comes off very dumb, and it comes off very irresponsible, if you want to say it like that. And I'm not being mean. I'm not trying to be mean to anybody or saying like, look, I'm going to tell you how to use your money. But I always want to recommend people that they would use their money in an effective way that is smart, and it just isn't just throwing money at the whim. Because I even do that with myself. There's sometimes I have to catch myself to make sure I'm not doing that. And it's hard, But I get it that there's some people that, hey, this phone does everything they want it to do. That it does absolutely everything, and they know how to use it. Like for content creators, like they even advertise that this phone is pretty much made for content creators. That this is the content creator's best friend. That this is the phone they should be buying. That they shouldn't have anything else but this phone. And it's crazy, because yeah, in terms of raw power, this thing is insane. Like it's not a joke. Like they did a lot with this phone. And it's very impressive what Samsung was able to do. And I applaud Samsung for what they did, because this is incredible. And in my opinion, it's going to be interesting to see where this plays out, because the S20 Ultra, obviously in terms of price, it came out at the same time as the Z Flip, which is funny that the Z Flip is only $20 cheaper. But it's, to me, I still believe the S20 Ultra is an anomaly, because it's weird. It's not an easy phone to just say direct comparison, let's go. No, it's not as easy as that. This phone definitely requires many months of research, analysis. People need to be using this phone for a couple months before they can really give a quote unquote review for this product, because there's so much that could be missed. And it only makes sense that when you give it time, you give time for those thoughts to process, and then you put that process down on paper and then decide to share your opinion about it, that it's well informed, that it knows what it's saying, and well, really that you know what you're saying, and that you do everything to the best of your ability. Because this phone definitely requires time to be reviewed, time to be studied, and to understand, what makes it tick. It needs time, because this isn't something where you can just say, okay, new smartphone, hooray, cool, get over in a month. No, it's a very weird phone, because it has no direct comparisons. Like this phone should be viewed as its own thing, that there is no equal to it, at least for now, at least. And my opinion still stands that this thing is an anomaly. It's weird. I like it. I think it's cool. I applaud Samsung for making this phone. I think it was realistically one of the smartest decisions they made in a long time, that they decided to make this phone. Now, granted, do I think that this is going to mean that there won't be a Note this year? I don't think so, in my opinion. Like, my opinion is, I don't think Samsung is going to make a Note, which would make, I think that'd be cool to do that, like, I'd say, think about it like this. Like, it makes sense to not make a Note, and that, every off year there'd be a Note, and then the year after there'd be an Ultra. That's a good way to swap it out, like to swap out everything. And now, granted, sometimes depending on the person, they'll be like, oh, if there's not going to be a Note this year and the Ultra is going to come out later in the year, then I'm just going to wait for the Ultra. I'm going to skip the regular ones. And really, that's something Samsung has to figure out what they want to do. Like, I do agree Samsung's playing it smart that they decided to reduce the S10 line and still keep the S10 line. So they're obviously pulling an Apple here, where Apple, when the new iPhone 11s came out, they actually reduced the price of the XR, and they still kept the other iPhones around and reduced their price. So I think Samsung is starting to go in the direction where Apple's going, where they realize this is not a hardware race anymore. This is a software race. Now, granted, I say that with a grain of salt because, well, the S20 Ultra exists. But in terms of a software game, yes, software is key. Samsung's been hard at work, fixing their software, making One UI and making it even better. And they've just been killing it, really. Like, they've just been absolutely killing it. And now, granted, we start to see the long-term effects. Are they going to be able to get more consistent software updates out? Are they going to be able to update these phones more consistently and, make sure they're up to date? customer support after the purchase, etc., etc. And there's many things to talk about. But I hope that I made this clear that this episode is more of a discussion and that you guys should let me know, how do you guys feel about the S20 Ultra? Are you going to buy an S20 Ultra? Why are you going to buy it? Do you see this phone as worth it to anybody? Do you see a specific use case where this phone would be the best choice out of everything else? Just let me know in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. Hit me up, send me messages, DM me, whatever you need to do to get my attention. And let me know. What do you guys think? But aside from that, that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I thank you guys so much for your time and coming back and listening to today's episode. It really means a lot to me. You guys keep coming back and listening because, this is a crazy journey. I'm loving every second of doing this. Obviously, we're pushing up on 100 episodes of doing this, which that's a big milestone to do 100 episodes of this show. That's just crazy. I'm excited because, like I said, the 100th episode special is really fun. I like what I'm talking about. I'm still in the process of getting everything worked out with Brian Tong so that we can get him to come on the show to do an interview. We're working all the kinks out and, talking about it, seeing what day works and et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, thank you guys so much for your love and support for all the past episodes. I know that a lot of you keep going back and listening to the old episodes, and, a lot of people keep listening and downloading them. So it really means a lot to me. You guys keep doing that, and thank you. It really, really means a lot to me. But aside from that, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for your time. I love you guys to death. And I'm going to see you guys next week. Please be safe. Don't do anything dumb. And please don't do anything I wouldn't do. And have fun, guys. Take care. God bless. I love you guys to death. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.